Assalamu alaikum. Let me begin by the state visit of President of Uzbekistan, His Excellency Mr. Shaukat Mirziyoyev from 3rd to 4th March at the invitation of Prime Minister Imran Khan. The Uzbek president was accompanied by a high-level delegation comprising the foreign minister and other members of the cabinet, senior government officials, along with business and media personnel. One-on-one meeting of the Prime Minister and the Uzbek President was followed by delegation-level talks and joint media stakeout. The President also held a separate meeting with the President of Pakistan. During the visit, the entire gamut of bilateral relations, including cooperation in political, trade, and economic, connectivity, education, culture, security and defense domains were reviewed. Several bilateral agreements and MOUs were signed. The second round of bilateral political consultations, the seventh session of Joint Ministerial Commission, and second Joint Business Forum were also held in Islamabad on the eve of the visit. This visit is demonstrative of Pakistan's enhanced engagement with Central Asian countries as part of the Vision Central Asia policy, with political and diplomatic, trade and investment, energy and connectivity, security and defense, and people-to-people relations as its key strands. Ladies and gentlemen, we have been closely following the situation in Ukraine and have remained proactively engaged with the members of the international community on this issue. Pakistan is committed to the fundamental principles of the UN Charter, self-determination of peoples, non-use or threat of use of force, sovereignty and territorial integrity of states, and pacific settlement of disputes. Equally, Pakistan upholds the principle of equal security for all. These principles, we believe, must be consistently and universally respected. Pakistan remains deeply concerned at the recent turn of events. This reflects a failure of diplomacy. Prime Minister Imran Khan regretted the latest situation between Russia and Ukraine and said that Pakistan had hoped that diplomacy could avert military conflict. We have since repeatedly stressed the need for de-escalation, renewed negotiations, sustained dialogue, and continuous diplomacy. All efforts must be made to avoid further escalation of violence and loss of life, as well as military, political, and economic tensions, which can pose an unprecedented threat to international peace and security and global economic stability. As consistently underlined by Prime Minister, the developing countries are hit the hardest economically by conflict anywhere. We hope the talks initiated between the representatives of the Russian Federation and Ukraine will succeed in bringing about a cessation of hostilities and normalization of the situation. A diplomatic solution, in accordance with relevant multilateral agreements, international law, and the provisions of the UN Charter, is indispensable. Pakistan also supports all efforts to provide humanitarian relief to civilians in affected areas. We are also most concerned about the safety and welfare of Pakistani students and other citizens in Ukraine. The majority of them have been evacuated through a concerted effort in coordination with our concerned missions there, who have been working round the clock. Those who remain will be evacuated soon. We appreciate the cooperation of the Ukrainian authorities as well as the Polish, Romanian, Hungarian, and other neighboring countries in this context. Ladies and gentlemen, by way of a quick roundup, at the invitation of the President of the Russian Federation, the Prime Minister Imran Khan visited Russia for an official visit on 23rd to 24th of February. The Prime Minister was accompanied by a high-level delegation, including members of the cabinet. The bilateral summit between the Prime Minister and the Russian President was the highlight of the visit. Prime Minister Imran Khan met with President Putin in the Kremlin on 24th February. The two leaders had wide-ranging consultations on bilateral relations as well as regional and international issues of mutual interest. Foreign Minister Qureshi also held delegation-level talks with Foreign Minister Lavrov. There has been a flurry of diplomatic activities in recent days. The Foreign Minister received the Executive Director of UNICEF, and he also received Mr. Gilmore, European Union Special Representative for Human Rights, on 21st of February. The same day, the Foreign Minister also received Ambassador Ridwan Hussein, Minister of State for Foreign Affairs of Ethiopia. The Foreign Minister highlighted the government's Engage Africa policy to deepen our across-the-board engagement with the African continent and the steps being taken in this regard. The Foreign Minister also held telephonic conversations with his German counterpart on 21st of February, wherein the two ministers exchanged views on bilateral relations as well as important regional issues. On 27th February, the Foreign Minister held a telephonic conversation with the Foreign Minister of Ukraine. The Foreign Minister shared Pakistan's perspective, reiterating serious concern at the situation and underscoring the importance of de-escalation and stressing the indispensability of diplomacy. Also on 27th February, the Foreign Minister received a call from Lord Tariq Ahmed. The two sides exchanged views on Pak-UK relations and regional and international issues of mutual interest. The Foreign Minister had telephonic conversations with his Polish and Romanian counterparts on 28th February and 1st March respectively. The Foreign Minister expressed appreciation to the two countries for warmly receiving Pakistani students and community members being evacuated from Ukraine. On 2nd March, the Foreign Minister also spoke to Mr. Josep Borrell, Vice President of the European Commission. Views were exchanged on the current situation in Ukraine and the emergency session of the General Assembly. Ladies and gentlemen, Pakistan and Ethiopia held the inaugural round of bilateral political consultations on 21st February. These were led by Foreign Secretary Suhail Mahmood and Ambassador Ridwan Hussein, Minister of State of Ethiopia. On 28th February, the Foreign Secretary Suhail Mahmood addressed the high-level segment of the Conference on Disarmament in Geneva in virtual format. In his statement, the Foreign Secretary underscored that adherence to international norms without any distinction or discrimination remained fundamental for sustainable global and regional peace and security. He urged the international community to ensure equitable and balanced approach towards issues of arms control and disarmament based on the principle of equal security for all states. On 1st March, Foreign Secretary Suhail Mahmood received Australia's Special Representative on Afghanistan, Mr. Daniel Sloper. Sharing Pakistan's perspective, the Foreign Secretary affirmed Pakistan's commitment to a peaceful, stable, and connected Afghanistan and highlighted efforts in support of this goal. I wish to also inform you that Pakistan and the United States are scheduled to hold an intersessional meeting of Trade and Investment Framework Agreement, TIFA, on 7th of March. The U.S. delegation for this meeting will be led by Assistant United States Trade Representative for South and Central Asia, Christopher Wilson. The meeting will focus on further enhancing trade and investment between Pakistan and the U.S. and to explore potential for growth in areas of mutual interest, including agriculture, health, energy, IT, and other sectors. 23rd February, ladies and gentlemen, marked the second anniversary of the horrific Delhi riots pogrom of 2020, a harrowing manifestation of India's systematic campaign to discriminate against, dispossess, and dehumanize the Muslim community and its worrying slide towards saffronization. That day also marked the 31st anniversary of the despicable mass rapes of Kashmiri women in Kunan and Pushpura, villages of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir in 1991. Despite lapse of 31 years, the perpetrators of this heinous act are yet to be brought to justice. This lack of accountability is a frightening example of the brazen impunity which defines India's gruesome human rights violations and reign of terror in IIOJK that continues unabated. During the last month alone, 8 Kashmiris have been martyred in IIOJK. The international community must compel India to halt its state terrorism in IIOJK, immediately cease human rights violations, lift the inhumane military siege, and let the people of IIOJK exercise their right to self-determination as enshrined in the relevant UN Security Council resolutions. Ladies and gentlemen, 27th February marked the 3rd anniversary of Pakistan's exemplary response to India's illegitimate and ill-conceived military airstrikes inside Pakistani airspace in utter violation of the UN Charter and international law. The botched attempt at infringing Pakistan's sovereignty was swiftly riposted by our valiant armed forces. Not only did Pakistan resolutely safeguard its sovereignty, it also displayed exemplary restraint. Pakistan is a proponent for regional peace and stability. At the same time, our desire for peace is accompanied by strong resolve and capability for self-defense, as was also demonstrated by the interception by Pakistan Navy of an Indian submarine yet another time earlier this week. India will be better served to remember this and avoid embarking on military adventurism. Lastly, let me note that preparations are underway for the 48th session of OIC Council of Foreign Ministers that Pakistan is going to host from 22nd to 23rd of March. This important conference is coinciding with the 75th anniversary celebrations of Pakistan's independence. It will showcase Pakistan's strong leadership in the Islamic world. Just to recall, Pakistan has held high-level meetings of the OIC in the past, beginning with the second OIC summit in 1974 in Lahore, the 1997 Extraordinary Summit, and 4 ICFMs, the last one being in 2007, besides 2 extraordinary special sessions on Afghanistan, the first one in 1980 and the most recent one in December last year. With this, I conclude, and I'm ready to take your questions.